In the fading light of a Wyoming summer, where the prairie stretched endless under a sky bruised with stars, Clara Monroe stood at the edge of her small farm, her gray hair catching the breeze like whispers of a life long lived. At 74, she had buried her hopes for love beneath years of toil and solitude, convinced her heart had no room for new chapters. "I'm too old for love," she murmured to the horizon, her voice barely louder than the crickets. But destiny, like a stubborn horse, had other plans, and it was about to bring a cowboy named Eli Tucker into her world, ready to turn her quiet life upside down with a single, soul-stirring promise. Clara's days were woven from routine and resilience. Her farm, tucked in the shadow of the Bighorn Mountains, was a patchwork of memories, rows of vegetables she grew to share with neighbors, a barn where she once danced with her late husband, Daniel, before cancer stole him 25 years ago. Their love had been fierce but brief, leaving her to raise their son, Michael, alone. Now Michael was a doctor in Denver, his visits rare but cherished. Clara filled her time with acts of kindness, delivering fresh produce to the local food pantry, sewing quilts for veterans, and teaching kids at the community center how to plant seeds. Lobes a young person's gamble, she they say with a wry smile, her eyes hiding a pang of what might have been. Yet she believed in the power of humanity, in the small gestures that could light up a dark day, even if she no longer sought them for herself. One golden September morning, Clara loaded her truck with baskets of tomatoes and zucchini for the annual Sagebrush Fair, a town tradition that drew crowds with its rodeo, bake-offs, and campfire tales. She was setting up her booth when a sudden gust knocked over a crate, sending vegetables rolling across the dirt. Before she could bend down, a weathered hand scooped up a tomato. "Can't let these beauties go to waste," came a voice, warm as a campfire. She looked up to see Eli Tucker, a 69-year-old cowboy with a face carved by wind and wisdom, his Stetson tilted just so. Eli had drifted into Laramie after selling his ranch in Colorado, seeking a quieter life after years of herding cattle and mending hearts broken by loss. His wife had passed 15 years prior, and his daughters were scattered, one a teacher in Oregon, the other a nurse in Texas. He volunteered at the fair, fixing fences and charming kids with lasso tricks. "I'm Clara," she said, brushing dirt from her hands, her tone cautious but polite. "Thanks for the save." Eli grinned, his eyes twinkling like the morning dew. "Placer es mine, Clara. Name es Eli." They fell into easy conversation, trading stories of harvests and hard times. As the day unfolded, Eli kept finding reasons to stop by her booth. Buying a basket of her vegetables, helping her carry crates, sharing a laugh over a spilled jar of her homemade salsa. By dusk, as the fire's band played a soulful waltz, he offered his hand. "Care for a spin? I'm rusty, but I reckon you could keep me in line." Clara's first instinct was to refuse. "I'm too old for dancing," she said, her voice firm but her heart unsteady. Yet something in Eli's gentle insistence, his lack of judgment, made her take his hand. They moved slowly under the lantern-lit sky, the music wrapping them in a moment that felt like a memory she hadn't lived yet. For the first time in decades, Clara felt a spark, not of romance, she told herself, but of being truly seen. As they parted, Eli tipped his hat. "Jube got a gift, Clara, giving so much to this town. Don't think it goes unnoticed." She drove home, her mind wrestling with the warmth in her chest, dismissing it as nostalgia. Love was for dreamers, not for someone who they already lived her story. Fall deepened, and Eli became a quiet constant in Laramie. He rented a cabin a mile from Clara's farm and threw himself into community work, repairing the church roof, mentoring teens at the local 4-H, and driving supplies to families hit hard by the economy. Clara noticed him everywhere, at the market, where he'd slip extra apples into her basket, at the food pantry, where they'd carry her heavy boxes, at town meetings, where his ideas for a winter coat drive sparked her own. Their conversations grew longer, richer. One chilly evening, as they sorted donations at the community center, Eli opened up about his past. "Lost my Ellen too young," he said softly. "Thought they'd never find my way again. But life's got a funny way of pointing you home." Clara shared her own scars, Daniel's death, Michael's distance, the quiet ache of a life spent giving. "I'm too old for love," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. Eli's hand rested on hers, steady and kind. "The heart doesn't age, Clara. It just waits for the right moment." Winter arrived with a vengeance, blanketing Laramie in a brutal snowstorm. The town rallied, turning the school gym into a shelter. Clara was there from sunrise to midnight, organizing blankets and hot meals, her selflessness a beacon for others. Eli worked beside her, hauling supplies and telling stories to calm anxious children. But one night, as the storm worsened, Clara realized she hadn't checked on her elderly neighbor, Mrs. Larsen, who lived alone up the hill. Against warnings, she set out in her truck, only to get stuck in a drift a mile from home. The cold was merciless, seeping into her bones as she huddled in the cab, her thoughts turning to regrets, the loves she'd locked away, the risks she'd never taken. What a waste, she whispered, her breath fogging the window. Then, through the Blizzard's roar, came the sound of hoofs. Eli appeared, astride his old mare, his face half frozen but fierce with determination. They'd ridden through the storm, knowing Clara would risk herself for others. Clara! Hang on, he shouted, dismounting to help her into the saddle, wrapping her in his coat. He led them to her farm, where he built a fire and brewed tea, his presence a lifeline. As they sat by the hearth, Clara's heart cracked open. Why risk your life for me, she asked, tears brimming. Eli took her hands, his voice steady as stone. Because I've waited my whole life for you, Clara. Every trial, every loss, brought me here. You're not too old for love, you're the reason I believe in it. That moment was a turning point, a profound realization that kindness could spark transformation. Clara saw in Eli a mirror of her own giving spirit, a man who lived selflessly, waiting for someone to share his heart. She leaned into him, their embrace a defiance of the storm outside. I've been scared to hope, she admitted. But you make me want to try. Eli's smile was a promise. We hope together. When spring bloomed, Clara and Eli married under the wide Wyoming sky, surrounded by a community they both nurtured. Michael came, his eyes misty as he hugged his mother. You showed me what it means to give, Mom. Now you're reliving it. Their farm became a haven for local kids, where Clara taught gardening and Eli shared cowboy tales, their love a testament to the power of humanity. As they sat on their porch years later, watching the prairie glow under a sunset, Clara knew love wasn't bound by time, it thrived in acts of selflessness, in unexpected turns, in hearts brave enough to open. Love is never too late, she told Eli, her hand in his. And in that truth, they found hope that inspired all who knew them, a reminder that kindness can rewrite any story, no matter how late the hour.